Hey everybody, this is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here today. I've got my friend Mitch. Mitch sent in a video from his recent expedition to the Karakoram range in Pakistan. Some insane flying. He nailed a crazy 210-kilometer FAI, and then the next day took a heinous collapse that had him reeling. So today I've got Mitch here. I want to give him an opportunity to share what he learned and his experience with you guys. And then we're going to review the clip and see if we can't add any value for you guys and for Mitch. Okay, so thanks for being here with us, Mitch.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, so give us just a brief overview of this expedition, maybe like 60 seconds there. And then if you can, let's talk about the event in question. And if you want me to share the screen and play the video and have you kind of narrate it, I'm happy to do that.
Cool. Well, yeah, last summer I spent 6 weeks in the Hunza Valley, and we went there to paraglide and climb and try to do some combo stuff. So fly to climb, fly to ski, and obviously just try to, you know, be in the biggest mountains on earth in a cool way, like by flying our paragliders. And it was an extremely special trip. It took a long time to prepare, and I felt like I was probably just right on the cusp of being a good enough pilot to be there because it is the biggest air I've ever been in and the biggest mountains literally on earth. But it's an incredible place, and I'm very fortunate I got to go and have a good time and come back safe.
Wow. Honestly, it's interesting that you mentioned that you were on your edge of your capacity to fly safely in those mountains because I've been paragliding for 12 years and when I watch the video, I'm actually like tensed. My body is a little bit tensed because I for a long time would love to fly there, but I actually kind of I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I'm ready. I'm not sure I'm ready.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everyone. I think that for me, I was feeling very current going into the trip,
Mhm.
and I recognized. I think I went into it with a good mindset, and that I was psyched to push myself and to have um, try to accomplish some things that I would be proud of, but also recognizing that I needed to keep my margins pretty wide because this is my first time there, first time I've flown, at that high of altitude, biggest mountains I've ever flown in, just new terrain. So
Remote and third world.
super remote. So like we would fly with survival gear every day. Like Volbiv kit was pretty much what we had on us. Because if you land out, like you're not you're out. Um,
Yeah, amazing. So it's also relevant here because you said that you went into the trip feeling very current, but you're also a relatively new paraglide pilot and have had a astronomical rise in the sport. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been flying and what sports you came from that lended to this kind of progression.
yeah, I got my P2 in spring summer of 2021, and so it has been a quick progression.
Crazy, man.
I I I came in from the climbing world
Mhm.
and pushing myself in that, and so I felt like through climbing I had a good headspace from which to pull from and work out of. And I think that paragliding lends itself to just like people who can deal with exposure. Maybe you have like good reflexes and
Mhm.
you don't mind just like putting yourself in these crazy situations like way up in the sky.
Yeah.
Um, and so like I had all that going for me, but I was really bad at paragliding to start, like when I was learning and getting my P2, I just didn't have good control of the glider. And luckily, I was able to sort of dial it in. And I had a lot of people around me who were incredible mentors who spent a lot of time helping me be safe, telling me when I was pushing maybe a little bit too hard,
Mhm.
um, helping me realize what was possible. And I've spent a lot of time doing this since.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What do you estimate your flight hours to be at this point?
I don't know. I mean, probably not a ton, like maybe 500
Mhm.
hours, if I had to
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, but really intentional, a lot of cross country, a lot of
Pretty
thermaling.
much all cross country. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
learning in
a,
Boulder was cool because you either bomb out and you get a literally 1 to 2 minute long flight, or you like scratch out. It's a hard site to scratch out of. So
yeah.
it like teaches you how to scratch and it teaches you how to fly in like dry, punchy thermals. And then moving to Utah, it's like we have plenty of that, plenty of strong air, plenty
Mhm.
of,
Yeah,
you know,
and definitely the highest concentration of talented cross country pilots in the country is Salt
yeah,
Lake City.
other people, incredible pilots to learn from and grow with and
Yeah. Yeah,
push
and
yourself.
you're also nice and personable, and that lends you well to be mentored, and people they invest their time and their energy in you, and you're fertile soil to give feedback to, which is one of the
Yeah.
reasons that we're here today.
And sometimes it takes you just like barging in and like being like, I want to come on the big flight.
And they're like,
Like
"Who's this guy?"
I'll jump in the retrieve vehicle. I spent so many times when like I would sign up to be with the big dogs and we'd have a retrieve driver and then I would bomb out first and just be on like a 9 hour car ride to nowhere,
Yep.
you know?
Mhm. Car ride to nowhere. Yep.
I've done that numerous times.
Wow.
So
Okay, great. Well, let's watch this clip here of this. So I'll share my screen here. You can kind of annotate it for people. Okay, so here's Mitch flying in the Karakoram. This is his video straight from his YouTube. It starts with him busting the coal here between these insane rock spires. Take it away, Mitch.
okay, well, it's kind of laggy, but I'm sure it'll does it look okay for you?
It looks perfect for me, and I'm recording my
Great.
screen, so.
Okay, so yeah, we had flown a big flight the day before, and we're definitely riding a high. And we'd flown this
Hmm.
specific leg the day before, the morning before, and it was pretty chill. It was, I guess, technically lee side, but we were trying to fly to China this day. So
Uh-huh.
I'm flying, and like the air starts to get turbulent, and I can't really tell.
I've got it paused here.
Okay. So yeah, thank you. So we had, like I said, flown this the day before. We were going to try to fly to China this day. And so we just had to go downwind in this direction. And at this point, we were pretty high. We were like well set up to make the first big crossing, which is over at this giant lake. And one thing to note is I'm at like maybe 16,500 or 17,000 feet right now.
It's crazy.
But I'm lower than all these like small mountains. You know,
Yeah.
I'm like these mountains are at like 18 to 20,000 feet, and the valleys between these mountains the valleys are so narrow, and so it's important to stay high and it's important to not get low in the valleys, especially on a windy day, which you're flying so fast in the Karakoram because you're high and the air is so thin that like you're always flying fast. So for us at the time, we didn't realize that wind was picking up. But I believe that the wind was picking up, and we entered
Mhm.
what would be considered lee side. Um, so yeah, you can go and play the video. So right here, I'm active piloting on brakes. Like I'm just fully I'm not scared. I'm not worried about my glider collapsing. You know, it's squirming around a little bit, but I am, fully giving it all the inputs I believe that it needs. And I'm trying to connect to this next little terrain over there. And then all of a sudden it just explodes. I've never had a frontal that violent, and I've never had a frontal or even like a collapse like that on brakes.
Yeah.
Nowhere near that. So it was just out of the blue, and you can see it in the glider. I just hit this giant rounded, I don't know if it's rotor or what, but from a thermal or shear or something, but it was violent. So immediately it dumps me and I get this crazy cravat, and my it actually threads itself through the lines. The
Mhm.
cravat does. So I'm looking at this like, oh no. And the terrain that I'm over is not
It's
it
insane, dude.
it's insane. It's very cliffy. Like you
Mhm.
can't tell. I wish I had a camera pointing down, but I'm like over cliffs
Hmm.
and it's not an ideal place to have a an event like this.
To say the very least.
Yeah. So pretty much immediately it's turning me, and I'm trying to counteract that a little bit. And I'm like, oh no, okay. So at this point, I tried to spin it out. I tried to do a negative, maneuver to get that crazy cravat out. And I had just done an SIV, and in that SIV, um, I was getting collapse or yeah, I'm sorry, I was getting cravats from when I was doing, back flies,
Hmm.
and I let it fly, and sometimes I come out with a cravat. And what we realized is it's really hard to pick the stabilo and to like get the cravat out that way, and brakes wouldn't work. So I was having to spin out all those cravats. So I had a lot of practice with that. But when you're over a lake with a life jacket on and a boat and an instructor talking to you, it's a little different. And so in this instance, when I had that big cravat, I was like, I need to spin this out. But you'll see that like I just wasn't committing enough to the spin.
Yeah.
And the number one priority for me in these moments is I was like, my glider is flying. I want it to continue to fly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after I put myself in that little, auto rotation, I get out of it. I weight shift really hard to the right.
Yeah.
I
That
do,
was, this is, I've scrubbed back here and this is, you said that you weren't committing. It's like kind of a pre-pump and then you try it again and it kind of just
and then I
spirals
hold
you.
it, but it doesn't quite. And I'm like, screw that. I do not want to do this right here. So I weight shift and just try to fly straight. Get as much clearance as I can. And at this point, the air is getting very turbulent. Like I have hit the turbulence. I have hit whatever is going on, and I'm getting hit by like mega sink and then mega lift. Like we're talking 8 meters per second up and down.
Yeah.
So trying to time it right as like when you're doing your spin was really tricky because I was constantly like boom, 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 it just going up and down. And so, anyways, right here, I'm trying to spin it out a second time. I
Which
commit a little bit harder, but still not enough.
it definitely clears off of a whole line set on the A's.
Yes. Yep. And then this third time, I really go for it. And the chaos that is this, like you almost me watching in slow motion. I was in sync when I initially spun the glider, and in that moment the cravat came out, but I'm in like crazy sync and turbulent air, and it just does crazy things I didn't understand. And then I hit the outside of a thermal, and it just balls my glider up. And then I go into the thermal and it explodes back open. I'm going up at 8.5 meters per second. So it was chaotic to say the least. And I'm like, honestly, that thermal was probably a godsend. Like my glider slammed open and this dust came off of it. And I was like worried about the lines breaking because it was so
Yeah.
forceful. But at that point, the glider's open.
Yeah. And
And
you're in rowdy air.
I'm in this rowdy 8.5 meter per second lee side climb, but my glider is open and I'm psyched about that. But at this point, I'm lower than I was. I did definitely lose a lot of altitude, and I'm very much in the lee at this point.
Okay, so you glide out and you're on the
Yep.
speed bar, and then there's another event here.
Yeah. I'm lower and it's gotten really windy, very venturied. And we're trying to make it out to the valley and then past like to the other side of the valley. And then we're going to have to work up the valley to find a safe place to land. But for now, I'm just trying to get out of the spot that I've found myself in. And so yeah, I'm on bar, and I had to be because it was so windy at this point. um, and I'm on bar and I feel something coming, so I come off bar, and sure enough I get whacked again.
Mhm.
um, Same thing, although this time I don't think it was through the lines. It's just a regular cravat, but still a kind of big, annoying one. And back to it. So I'm just going to try to spin it again. And I know I didn't do a great job of like spinning it out, but like I said, it felt very imperative that I not overdo it either and like, create a larger problem for myself. So I was trying to find the balance of, and I was getting like a little bit out each time. So it was kind of
Uh-huh.
reaffirming the fact that maybe I shouldn't, just totally dump my brakes all the way.
Yeah.
Um, and
And
it
then the
finally,
video, go ahead.
yeah. But, one thing to note is, and this was a really special thing that occurred, is my buddy Joel, who's a young Swiss pilot. He's incredible. He's going to be one of the world's best pilots. Him and I were flying together, and when this event happened, we were about similar altitudes, and then he stayed with me. He should have left like at that point. He should have been like, "Oh, that's gnarly over there. Like it's dangerous. I got to get out of here." And instead, he stayed with me and talked to me on the radio, and like didn't really tell me what to do, but gave me encouragement
Yeah.
and stayed with me. And then we fought out of that really messed up position that we found ourselves in together. And it was one of the, I mean, I've never had like such a, like with climbing partnerships, you go through crazy, scary things together and you feel closer because of it. But I've never had someone go out of their way to put themselves in danger to like really step up and be there for me, like
I
he
love
did.
that.
And that was really, really neat.
That's
Um,
amazing. That just
yeah,
speaks to
so
like the level of brotherhood and
definitely,
camaraderie and like community
definitely.
that we actually have when we do these things.
But that whole event was like less than 10 minutes, but we had another hour and a half of really gnarly flying, fighting upwind up this
Yeah.
valley to get a safe place to land. So it was not over, but the video stops. So,
Okay, so wow. There's a couple things that I want to cover with you, and let me just unshare here. Okay, so to reflect it back to you, basically your experience as a high level rock climber, especially lead climbing, puts you in a position of exposure that lends itself really well to sticking with scary, dangerous emergency situations in paragliding.
mhm,
The thing that this video shows about you more than anything else is that you have an amazing capacity to not leave the scene of the crime and to deal with situations that are ugly and scary with composure.
mhm,
It is the thing that you demonstrated that is the most useful for people to witness. It is the glider is cravated in a nasty way, and you control the heading, and then you try to spin it, you control the heading, you try to spin it, you control the heading. You just like keep iterating, keep iterating. This is not working. I need to try something slightly different. Do I need to commit more? Yes, that's scary, but I have to do it. Okay, here we go. So, I just beginning with just pure kudos here and a great example of this. And it is of no wonder to me that you learn those things through being on the sharp end of a rock climb. Lead
mhm,
climbing is really scary, getting above your bolt, being above your gear, being on chossy rock, mixed climbing, all of these things that I know that you've done
mhm.
um, definitely lend itself to having a hard head and being hard headed in the right way in paragliding, like that exposure and scary things don't totally trigger your nervous system into um, dysfunction is enormous capacity.
To add to that, I think that being current, number one, and number two, uh, taking SIV, like I
Yeah.
think those things also very much lend themselves to me staying calm and just trying to work through the problem, and not start freaking out and doing random things. But like SIV is scary, at least for me. Like I find it to be pretty terrifying. Like you get towed up in the sky and you have this like feeling of doom as you get like
Yeah.
30,000 feet over a lake.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, well, I'm about to do the most messed up roller coaster ride I've ever been on, and I'm going to
Yeah.
do it myself. And
Yeah.
like, afterwards, I feel like I objectively think it's fun, but I'm scared shitless,
Yeah.
And
Should
I
be
think,
scary. I think that's part of what you're learning to deal with is
yeah,
your fear.
yeah, and I think that is a really good or a takeaway for me is like SIVs are really great and can save your life, and
Beautiful.
so
Okay. I am going to share my screen here and I'm going to walk you through the things that I noticed about your video.
Cool.
Okay, brother, you seeing your flying self once again?
Hmm.
Okay, so the first thing that I noticed about the video is that you're busting the coal here. Earlier in our conversation, you said that here in the Karakoram, you were feeling like you were at the edge of your capacity to fly safely, so you are increasing your margins. And I
Hmm.
think that just the beginning of this video, the coal bust, is actually a moment where you're not conserving your margins, and especially
Definitely.
if the what you say is true about the conditions, that it was very windy, that you're flying in the lee side, and that the thermals were going up and down at plus and -8. I would say that it seems like this is out of my comfortable risk tolerance. And so in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, incredible footage. And then I was like, wait a second. Aren't the conditions about to like tie your glider into a knot? Maybe stay away from the
Oh,
rock
it's such a
spires.
good point. And because, and like up to that point, I've been flying for a bit and the conditions were really nice.
Mhm.
And it was still pretty early. And yeah, I don't know.
Well,
As I
another
was,
thing that I heard you say was that you guys were on a high from yesterday, doing
we were,
210K
yeah,
FAI, feeling a little high
yeah. And, and like I flew around these rocks the day before as well. And it was
mhm,
really light in the morning. So usually the valley ones are coming from the right side of the screen.
uh-huh.
So um, they're coming right to left. And right now, it didn't feel like there's much wind, but this is kind of like the ridge. So once you pass this, I think it's like you are in the lee. Um, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the aspect or something, but it definitely turned on more over there than it had been
Yeah.
where I was at currently.
Okay. So, when I recorded the other video about this, I basically like I play through this, and then at the very end, when you're like, fuck this, like I got to get out of here, I
Mhm.
invite people to consider from that position, with that headspace, would you fly through the spires in the beginning of the video? And for me, the answer is no.
Mm.
Um, but let's fast forward here. Okay, so the here it really does show like the insanity of the terrain that you're in and the remoteness. There's no, when we look at footage of the Swiss Alps, it's like it's all beautiful and there's a road at the bottom and there's
Yeah.
rescue helicopters that'll be there in 15 minutes and the top of the peaks are 10, 12,000 feet, the big ones. And this is, you're already at 17.5 and looking way up at huge mountains. So
Yeah.
it's a different place. Um, Something that I mention in my other recording is that we're all between taking collapses that catch us off guard.
Hmm.
And as you mentioned, this one is particularly violent, particularly quick, and catches you off guard more than you had ever been. So I don't spend a lot of time talking about what needs to happen to keep this from collapsing because obviously pulling the brakes down, pulling the rear risers down, we all know that that's how you keep the glider from collapsing. And I focus instead on what to do when you get a cravat. Looking at this screenshot right here, your feet are above your head. You're looking backwards at a glider that is facing the ground 180 degrees away from you. This is like insane, dude.
Yeah.
This is a really bad position. And you can also see here this small
That's,
white crescent.
yep.
This is your friend,
That's my friend.
Joel, right?
Cool.
Joel Fuchs.
Yep.
Yeah. Impressive pilot indeed. Okay, so the thing that you demonstrate over and over and over perfectly is that the glider cravated can be controlled, it can be flown straight. Right here, the glider is you are fighting line twist,
Hmm. Definitely.
right? Which is a really, really scary moment, I think. Once your feet come back between the risers, I think you get a lot more comfortable. Am I right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I've experienced that too. So then you control the heading. Here, you do a little, as you mentioned, uncommitted pump, pre-pump. The thing with the pre-pump is that in spinning the glider, what you really want to have happen is for the glider to remain overhead and not induce any roll. Any
Hmm.
kind of roll that you induce is actually just going to add airspeed, and then it's going to make the spin like unreasonably violent for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It becomes a coconut spin if you have any roll energy. So the and you demonstrate the perfect technique for spin here in just a moment, and we'll get into that. But again, what you're demonstrating here is leading edge down, big cravated, auto rotating glider can be controlled with the weight shift and the outside brake.
Hmm.
Okay. And then the other thing that you're demonstrating perfectly here is that you have patience. So many of the videos that I review, people take a collapse, they have a cravat, and they're immediately frantically pulling at the lines. They're pulling at the brakes. They're tug, tug, tug. They're scared. They're like, this needs to change right now. But in reality, it does not need to change right now. The only thing that matters is that you have heading control. And I think that, one of the things I said in the recording was that, Mitch could have flown out to a decent place and thrown his reserve. Mitch could have flown out and tried to land the glider like this. There
Hmm.
are many things that are possible, especially after your second spin that is more successful. We'll watch that one here. Um, also I notice here as you fly into strong lift. My into What I would want to do is I would want to do my maneuvers in strong lift. I
Hmm.
try to do my acrobatics in strong lift here at Pine Mountain. Like I find I fly through sync. You don't want to be in sync when you're doing acro. It only increases your descent rate. So when I
Yeah.
find myself at glass off in nice beeps, that's where I'm gonna do helis and stuff.
Okay. Well, I just learned something new. So thank you.
Well, it's like if the ground is the problem, then anytime that I'm gonna like spin the glider or deal with something, my
Absolutely.
descent rate is gonna be less if I'm in 3 meters a second lift. Okay, so your second spin here, it makes it way better. Did you notice a considerable change in the glider and how easy it was to control the heading after that second spin?
Yes, it did get a lot easier, but yeah, I was still in the mindset. I was like, I need this out.
Yeah,
So
you're still scared and still clenched. So,
yeah.
and like I've said a number of times and will reiterate, your capacity to deal with this where it is at your flight experience is very impressive. Here comes the third spin, and this is where I think I have some insight for you.
Yeah.
You do a wonderful job in the spin. If we look at your hand position here, you go straight from trim speed all the way as far as you can, as fast as you can, and it does spin the glider. You let it develop long enough until the wingtip starts popping off of the lines. I'm going to do my best to scrub through here.
Yeah.
Now you're looking up and you're seeing that the glider is clear,
Hmm.
okay? And the glider is still yawing over or rolling over. And right here, you see on the right wingtip, you see a lot of brake deflection. Okay.
Yeah. It
This
was
is
just
you stalling
diving
the
so
glider.
hard. Okay.
This is you stalling the glider. So then if we just push play, we see now even though the glider is kicked way over, it is completely stalled. The tail is curling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anytime you spin the glider, it's an asymmetric stall. And anytime you spin, one side of the glider is stalled. It makes the other side of the glider very susceptible to stall,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing a heli and you jam on the outside brake, like the glider stalls pretty immediately.
Yeah.
So any time that you're trying to spin out the cravat, even though you have to let the spin develop to clear the lines, you also want a late catch on the outside wing because you need to let the glider start flying again completely before you correct the roll and the yaw of the spin that you've induced.
That makes sense.
So in SIV, a lot of instructors will do a spin appreciation progression. So you basically start by pulling it as far as you want and immediately letting up. And then we basically like have people develop the spin more and more and more. And in general, like you want to be letting the outside wing do its thing because you're trying to induce this spin so that it'll be negative and clear the lines.
Yeah.
When you catch the outside too quickly and too sharply, you stall the glider. You were current in SIV, and so I think that what happens here is the glider stalls and it's way over back there. It's My intuition here is that to let the glider shoot and fly again from this configuration is a total no-go, and you intuit that. So you restall the glider and it stalls violently into a ball, right?
Hmm.
Basically, it's super asymmetric and it's coming from way on one side and shooting to the other. So you stall the left side of the glider and you see it kicks back really violently. And it's actually that violent tail slide asymmetric that actually balls the right side of the glider up. And then in this frame, you can see the logo here on Arctic R. The left wingtip is the only part of the glider that is open to the air.
Yeah.
And it immediately pulls the right side of the glider out in an accordion perfectly.
And but I will say that I think happened because I hit the core of an 8.5 meter per second thermal. It
I
literally,
think that that is probably true, bro. You're definitely
yeah.
in like as far as like the out checking the outside to stall the glider. When we're talking about a stall, we're talking about pitch relevant, angle of attack relevant, airspeed relevant. The air can really change your pitch, your angle
Yeah.
of attack, your airspeed. All of that stuff can change in an instant because of the air mass that you're in. So I don't doubt that at all, bro. I don't doubt that at all. But I do think that you stalled the glider there,
Yes. Yes.
and it was because you caught the spin early and sharp with the right brake.
Do you think it could have anything to do with the fact that so I was performing that last spin in sync, and right when I kind of pulled, I is when I feel like I went into deep sync and like
Mhm.
weird, weird turbulent sync. Do you think that could have, uh, you know, added to? I don't know. I mean, I obviously stalled the glider, but do you think the air could have anything to do with that at all, or is it
Totally.
just
Absolutely. I
okay?
think there's a number of factors here, bro, and I have so much charity for you in this position. Just the nature of where you are in the world, the
Yeah.
nature of what you've just endured as far as a huge collapse and a cravat you've had to control the heading of, and then you're trying to clear, and it's taking three attempts of spinning the glider. This is a terrifying situation. So the air is very thin. The glider is super powerful at that altitude and flies way faster than you're used to in Utah. Like there's so many factors that compound. The fact that you like managed it is impressive to begin with. So the air mass being plus and -8 and you flying in the lee, can that have something to do with it? Absolutely. Like
Yeah.
absolutely. It's not going to be easy for you to like nail a perfect heli in that air mass. And for the same reason, it's not going to be easy for you to nail a perfect stall,
Yeah.
spin, control, all of these things. So there's lots of factors compounding against you here. The one thing that I want to introduce here is that in general, for me, when I go back and I look at the cravat that you have initially,
Mhm.
this cravat right here, I take one look at this and I'm not going to try to spin the glider here. The only way out, the only way forward for me here is to stall the glider.
Yeah.
Um, I am more comfortable stalling the glider than spinning the glider. I have a lot of stalls. I've trained acrobatics, done lots of helis, all that stuff, and I probably have a couple thousand stalls. It's kind of my daily acrobatics is deep stall, dynamic full stall, spiraling to big dynamic full stall. And so I'm really comfortable with that. I'm much less comfortable allowing airspeed into the system when the glider is not complete.
Yeah.
And so for me, when the glider is cravated, I want to take airspeed out of the system rather than add it in. So for me, on this, I would pull into a deep stall and I would only tail slide as much as I need to, right? I'm not going to like rock it back into a big messy tail tucking full stall ball thing. I'm not
Yeah.
doing that. I'm very experienced. I'm going to like ease it into deep stall, and deep stall so often clears it. With this kind of cravat, when it's really sticky and wrapped around an A line, it's definitely going to need to go backwards for a while to clear that part of the cravat. But then like just coming back into deep stall and filling the span, what you were saying about your SAV, your full stalls that are coming out in cravats, the reason that you're coming out in a cravat is because you're not filling the pressure and completing the span before you
Yeah.
let the glider fly again, right? So that's a great way to practice this. It's like the same thing. You go tail slide, and that'll clear the cravat, and then as you come, you have to like gradually let up, and you pre-fill, and you're basically flying, finding the glider in a deep stall configuration until the span completes. And then once the span is complete and the glider's over your head, hands up is going to let it fly. So I think that my intuition, Mitch, is that when you go back in 2030 and you take this same cravat in the same place, you will deep stall, you will tail slide, you will deep stall your way out of this. Um, I just see that as part of your progression. Like I said, I am more comfortable taking airspeed out of the system than adding it in this configuration.
That's fair.
Okay, so then to scoot forward here onto your other collapse, my intuition here, my tip. So you felt something and you tried to get to the brakes. I think getting to the brakes is the mistake. I think
I
you need
think
to,
so too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think you
Uh,
just need to come off the bar as quickly as you can and ram that rear riser down to the floor. And then if that doesn't do it, then you're on the brakes anyways, dealing with whatever consequent cravat or whatever happens.
I agree with that.
And I think, what my intuition here is that after everything that you've just endured that we've watched, now you're really wanting the breaks. Like you're like, you want to be in your safe place and your warm blankie of like having the breaks in your hand. So you're like going for that.
I was uncomfortable on
Yeah.
the
Bro,
bar for
I'm
sure.
uncomfortable just I'm in Bend, Oregon. I'm uncomfortable watching this, knowing that you're totally fine. So
Yeah.
that's totally reasonable. So I think that's why you take the collapse in the first place. So once again, you demonstrate excellent situational awareness. Don't let the glider turn you. Don't let the glider turn you. Don't let the glider turn you. And also you're warmed up on these spin
Mm.
recoveries. So watching your spin here, this is perfect textbook form, man. It's like head is outside of the risers, your hand goes from the brake pulley in a half wrap all the way as far as you can take it, as fast as you can do it. And you let the spin develop a little bit there. It doesn't quite work on that one, and you iterate. The second attempt here, you really do show you see how you tip your hand down and you actually put your elbow up. This engages your shoulder in the movement. You see that? And you
Yeah.
just drive it down. This is good technique, and maybe you have a word for people on uh, the brake pressure. The brake pressure to spin the glider is actually quite high.
It's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot, and especially iterated. It's like you're kind of using a different muscle group there.
Totally.
This one clears the most of the cravat. Then something happens here that I noticed that you speed up. I'm not sure if you pick at the stabilo or if the glider pressure and just flying kind of clears the cravat a little bit, but pop, it just kind of pops out a little bit itself.
I ended up hitting the stabilo.
Yeah. Okay.
When it
And then
was,
your final spin, it's definitely much less developed than you need, but still, here this shows this you spin and then at the when the glider is rolling over, you pull the outside brake real hard. So just be careful anytime you're spinning. You want to late catch the roll to affect to catch the heading of the glider.
that makes sense.
So then the other I've made a number of videos on how to deal with cravats. And as you mentioned, picking at the stabilo when there is a considerable cravat is a non-option. Like just control the heading and then look over to the collapse side and lean over to the collapse side and reach over to the collapse side. It doesn't really work like that. With big cravats, especially I've explained this on the channel, if you're going to clear a huge cravat like that, you're going to need to pull in a meter of
Hmm.
stabilo, put it in your mouth, reach up, get another meter of stabilo, because you're going to have to affect huge changes in the line plan to get that out on its own. Spinning and stalling really is the way. I have positioned this lesson for people as the one skill that they cannot paraglide without. And I think that your capacity to stick with it, situational awareness, and control your heading and iterate is the skill that saved your life this day. And so I'm so uh, happy to share your skills with other people.
Thank you. And honestly, I learned some stuff right there.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so I really appreciate it. Of
Yeah, Mitch, thanks so much for sharing the video.
course.
Yeah, look out for those rock spires, and uh, I'm 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 impressed and inspired by your pursuit of paragliding. Can't wait to fly again with you. We had a nice
Oh
little
man.
flight off Grandeur last year.
Yeah.
And definitely send us the link to the FAI triangle that you did in the Karakoram. I'll put it
But
in the description of the video and I'll link your channel as well.
And fun story about that flight, I did not have any map loaded, and so was just free balling the whole thing. Just following
Wow.
natural like
Yeah.
pathways of the mountains and
Yeah.
the valleys, and it was a
Yeah.
trip.
You are definitely bold and you definitely have a hard head for this stuff. I would recommend as many helicopters, deep stall, and dynamic full stall training as you can get in. The more you can get comfortable with controlling the heading when the glider is actually flying backwards, then for me, I have this safety of like, oh, as long as I can control the heading, I actually don't care whether it's flying forwards, backwards, it's no problem. But I don't want the glider to turn and I don't want the glider to have asymmetric flying characteristics.
Yeah,
So I think those things will serve you. And I think once you can heli your Arctic R, then you won't have to spin out cravats.
makes sense.
Okay,
I'll
brother.
practice that.
Thanks so much for sharing
Thank you, man.
and for talking with me and wishing you an amazing flying season.
Yeah, you as well. Maybe I'll come visit you up in Bend.
I dare you, brother. I don't know. There's not that many sites that people can fly 400 kilometers foot launched in America, but this happens to be one of them.
Wow, awesome.
Okay, Mitch, take care, bro.
All right, see you later.
See ya.